Kia ora, HD whānau. It's Nikki here. I'm trying really hard to make a video at home and I'm not great at that. So please bear with me if I waffle a bit or look horrible or do something silly. What I wanted to make a video about was a concept of youth identity called edgewalking. Now, the reason that I decided to make a video rather than just setting a reading or finding another video on YouTube is, first of all, it's a really straightforward concept, but the academic literature around it is quite complicated in places. Secondly, it's a really new concept, and we're applying it to youth, which of course is a growing new field with a lot of new really exciting ideas. So, first of all, I thought I would explain to you what edgewalking actually is. Back in 1999, a researcher called Nina Kurbs, was interested in this idea of how globalization is affecting our identity development and whether the impact of being able to access more globally with social media, mainstream media, the internet, and various other ways of connecting around the globe is actually impacting people's identities and how they see themselves and where they fit in. She came up with the concept of people who are edgewalkers, who seem to be able to walk between these various worlds without a sense of, this is my backyard, I only know the people 10 miles from my home, which may have been how life was 50 years ago. Kurbs applied that in a more business-like way. If you look on YouTube and Google Kurbs edgewalking, you're likely to find her talking about the modern business place as opposed to young people. Where young people fall into it is a really exciting Pacifica researcher, Anne-Marie Tupuala. She was based out at Victoria University in the late 90s and the early 2000s and worked with a really good friend and close mentor of mine, Fiona Beals. What Tupuala found was that she was able to really effectively apply edgewalking to young people, especially within the context of Samoan young women. She saw that these young women were not only able to walk on the edge and develop their own sense of culture and identity between two worlds, being Pacifica and Palangi, that they were also using this seamlessly. It wasn't hard work for them, it was just how they were as young people. She completely disagreed with the idea of Erickson that we have this crisis that therefore forms our identity and that we have to form our identity in a way that overcomes something. What she found is that with modern ways and modern means, people are shifting and shaping and finding who they are between the worlds rather than coming down on one side or another. Sorry, see, warned you at home. Lastly, the last researcher that's had a bit to say about this is my close friend and mentor, Fiona Beals. Dr. Fee, as she's known within the youth work industry, has published shifting the discussion purely from Tupuala's research that was just interested in Pacifica young women to what about every young person? The conversation that she started in 2014 at a summit for Arotayahi started to ask questions around marginalisation, refugee young people, and people from any culture or identity. She also really managed to shift that conversation in a way that was really important, in that culture is deeper than just ethnicity. That's a really important concept to hang on to over the next few years. When people talk about culture, it really truly means more than ethnicity. If I think about myself as a young person back in the 90s, way back in the dim dark ages, what I would have identified mostly with were ideas around the culture of grunge music and how that fit with my concept of myself growing up in a small farming community at the edges of Auckland. I also felt heavily involved with my local Māori culture, having been brought up through Ngāhui Whamarai and Pukekohe. I also would have identified with my white market gardener, 9th generation Franklin immigrant status because of my close relationship with my grandparents. What Fiona has talked about is allowing young people to walk safely between those different worlds. It's not that the worlds are easy, and it's not that forming your identity on the edge is an easy thing. There's still confusion, there's still loneliness, there's still that experience of being a young person. But if we want to talk about participation and helping young people to shape their lives, what we're interested in is how they do that, rather than putting more labels on them. So, edgewalking, as I understand it, is around young people forming who they are between these different opposing forces in their lives. A really extreme example is one of the questions that will pop up in your quizzes, so pay attention right now. You have a young person who may be a member of a youth gang committing crime or getting involved in quite risky situations that isn't necessarily good for them, but allows them to feel that they fit in with their peers. Then the very next morning, they put on their best clothes and head off to church with their family, because that's what the family expects them. How does that young person come through their adolescence, shaping their identity between these two opposing camps? For youth workers, that's where the gold is. That's the edge, and we hope to be able to walk with them on the edge to allow them to negotiate and take risks in a really safe way, rather than potentially in a way that's harmful to them and to their future. Lastly, the really cool thing that researchers like myself, or Fiona, or I'm sure your team out at Waitakere are really interested in, is how this concept of edge walking and walking with young people creates a real space for transformation and creation. Where we see a lot of edge walking expressed is through music. One of the clips that we'll show in class if we have time is a really cool video from the late 90s by Dawn Raid rapper King Kapisi, who some of you may have heard of, where he talks really, really clearly around his ideas of edge walking between Samoan culture, Palangi culture and New Zealand Aotearoa culture, while also staying true to his hip-hop roots. So hopefully that's given you guys a little bit of a taste for what edge walking might be. We'll go more into this in class, because this is one of the bits that I feel really passionate about. So for those in my streams, I'll look forward to teasing it out with you, but also really hope that you come up with some questions yourself around, do you agree with this? Is it relevant? Is it useful? How does this apply to nurses, medical imaging students, and all the other people that might be in our classes? If you wanted to do some more reading around this, or if you're really particularly interested in it, the main people to start with would be Fiona Beals, with her research published at 2014 after the Arotayahi Summit, but also going back to the core document as it applies to youth with Anne-Marie Tupuala's research in 2004. Now, I'm not sure if you can get that for free. I know you can with Fiona's work. If you're wanting a copy of Tupuala's research, I do have it and am more than happy to make you guys be able to access a version of it. Awesome. Have a great day. See you later.